All right, what is up, football fans? Welcome into a live edition of XFL Chalk Talk. We're going to be talking some fantasy football tonight.
Yeah.
Guys, how are we doing?
Yeah, man.
Thanks
Doing
for everybody
great.
who's joining.
Doing
Looks
great,
like
man. I'm excited.
more and more people are joining on. Before we begin, there's something that I need to address. We posted our power rankings for week 2 today, and Billy, I think Snyder's his name, called me out. Billy said, "No offense to Riley, but is it just me or does he seem not as happy as usual?" Damn it, Billy. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for calling me out.
I feel like that's a low blow.
Yeah,
right? Like,
well,
that's the ultimate low blow you can get. I don't know. Maybe that's
well,
just
Billy saw something. I don't know if other people noticed. I was trying to hide it as much as possible, but I could barely walk that day. So, like, that weekend we were at Walter Sports Bar, right? We did our pregame show, which was a huge hit, had so much fun. Then we went to the DC Defender Seattle Dragons game. So we had to load all of our stuff at Walters, unload, load back up, take our stuff to the stadium, load our stuff back up, drive home, unload it. And then I stopped by my folks' place Sunday, and had to help them move a bunch of crap. I moved a lazy boy like 3 flights of stairs by myself.
Ooh.
And then I came home and I was playing in the yard with my kids and the neighbors, playing some basketball, and my back just straight up went out on me. I was dribbling a basketball and I was done. Next thing I knew, I was on the ground and couldn't move. So, like, yeah, I was in so much agony for 3 days. I could barely walk. I was on crutches that day, but
Yeah.
the show
Yeah, I was
must
gonna say,
go
I think
on,
you
right?
Yeah, so you showed up to the show and you had a crutch and you were basically like barely moving to get into the chair. You just kind of fell into it when we recorded.
Yeah. So I tried to power through, but I guess Billy saw right through me. It called me out. So thanks a lot, Billy. But I'm feeling a lot better. So
It's like the ultimate old man thing, though. Like, when you said that, you're like, dude, my back gave out. And I was like, are we really getting that old?
yeah,
Is
I mean, I'm
this
only
really
32 years
happening
old.
right
I
now?
thought I had at least another decade before that kind of stuff started happening.
Start
but I
having
guess,
back issues.
But I
Yeah.
guess not. But
So
yeah.
what did the doctor say, Riley? Like, what did they actually
The
say?
doctor told me to toughen up and stop being such a little wuss. No, I'm just kidding. No, I either have a slip disc or I had spasms around my spine, which sounds fun.
Okay.
But I was freaking out. So at one point that night before we get started, not to drag on, but that night that it happened, I was debating on going to the ER, and I was like, oh, I'll wait it out, see how I feel in the morning. I have an 8-month-old and a 3-year-old. So at the same point during the night, my 3-year-old's in our bed crying. She's having a nightmare or something. The 8-month-old is in her crib crying. I'm on the floor because I tried to go to the bathroom and just collapsed in pain. Can you imagine what my wife was probably thinking? I'm
your
surprised she
poor
didn't
wife.
just leave us.
I think she's packing up her clothes like, I'm out of here. This is it. I can't take it anymore.
But I'm feeling a lot better. So let's get into it. We're talking fantasy football tonight. We did this on our pregame show, and it was a lot of fun. Had a lot of
Big
comments.
hit.
If you guys have any comments that are watching, go ahead and leave them in the comment section. We'll try to get to them. But right now we're going to go through our optimal lineups that we have set for DraftKings. And I believe, Kenny, you wanted to get us started off. So I'm going to pull up your DraftKings lineup here and let you get right into it, sir. So here we go.
Yeah, so starting off for me, the entire budget I used all but $100, so I had $100 left over. So I made pretty good use of the entire cap space between all these picks. So starting at quarterback, we have Landry Jones, who's making his season debut versus the LA Wildcats. And the reason I went with Landry, even though I'm a little worried about the rust factor, is because the turmoil LA's in. They fired their defensive coordinator. They lost their defensive captain. We've already covered that extensively. And then if you look at the injury report, they have a slew of defensive players who either did not participate or have been limited in practice. So I think it's a recipe for Dallas to finally get going. Landry's going to get the ball rolling, going to get some plays downfield and really open up things in that how mummy air raid offense. So I think he's going to have a big game versus LA. At running back, I went with Jarrell Presley versus New York. Tampa got blown out 23-3. No doubt. Like no question. The final score looked uglier than what it was because if you really dig into the stats, Tampa ran the ball great. They had 150 yards on the ground last week.
Yep.
So
I agree with that.
I fully expect Jarrell Presley to take advantage of that and really get the ball moving because I think the strength of New York is their secondary. So I think Pep's really going to want to establish the run early and often in that game. And it's going to be 32 degrees and windy and outy. So the run game is going to be very important. Then I went with Nelson Spruce at wide receiver. While I am concerned about the quarterback position, because right now we don't know if Josh Johnson's going to start or not. Chad Kanoff's been injured. He hasn't been practicing. So it looks like Jalen McClendon could be going for LA. And that does concern me. But the only reason I'm not concerned is because Nelson Spruce is a target machine. He's by far and away the best option on offense. And it showed last week. I think he had 13 targets and 12 receptions, right around there. So he is going to be the number one guy, and they're going to force feed him. And I'll take force feeding all day, even if you're on a bad offense, because it is PPR. So I'll take it. Dan Williams is my other receiver. Seattle's secondary is soft. We saw that in person last week. They got burnt on a double reverse pass. They had Rashard Ross cooked number 27 on a 4th down and 8 conversion for a touchdown. I mean, their secondary was very, very soft and not impressive. Plus, he led the team with 9 targets last week. He looks like the real deal. The threat, Dan the Threat Williams, will be a threat again this week. He's going to put up a lot of numbers, and I don't care if it's Murray, Flowers, or Cornelius throwing the ball. He's going to be it. Flex, I have Nick Holley. Other than the fact that I think he's just a really good value pick, $4,800 in a very high octane offense. It's going to be a revolving door, I think, for fantasy purposes in Houston's offense. I think you're going to have a lot of guys lead the team in receiving and receptions each week. But I do think your floor for being the 3rd or 4th option is higher than a lot of ceilings for number 1 and number 2 options on other teams. So I think you can't go wrong with Nick Holley at $4,800. It's a great value. Then I have Colby Pearson for New York. He fits that offense well as a slot guy. He runs crisp routes. Matt McGloin is more known as a precision passer than a deep throw passer, as evidenced by last week. He played well, but he definitely left some throws on the table deep. But he was money in that mid-range game. He'll hit any throw within 20 yards, and that's where Colby Pearson lives. So I think he could have a big day versus DC. And then for defense, I have the Roughnecks. Again, another value play, $3,400. They have elite pass rushers. They led the league in hurries last week. They had 5 sacks. They lived in that LA backfield. And for them not to be one of the top 2 defenses to choose this week, I was really stunned by. And I said, you know what, $3,400 is a great value pick, and it allowed me to spend more in other areas. So for me, this is my optimal lineup this week.
So, Kenny, let's break down a couple of these guys. One, I'm so shocked to see Nick Holley. He's like your new man crush. This is like the man crush list. Like Nelson Spruce is on here, Nick Holley's on here. My favorite pick that you probably made is Colby Pearson. I wanted to pick him, but I ran out of money, and that last flex spot was my last spot. So he had a great game last week, and everything you just said about him. He fits that offense well. There's no update, at least from what I've heard. We're going to ask Mike Mitchell when we interview him. We're going to record that segment later tonight. We're going to ask him if there's any update on Tanner Gentry or D'Angelo Yancey about any timetable for their return. But in the foreseeable future, it's guys like Teo Redding, Colby Pearson, Joe Horn Jr. So I think Colby Pearson's a good pick there. I'm a little shocked that you went with Jarrell Presley, considering how the Guardians' defense played last weekend, and then the fact that the DC running game was basically non-existent. I know that. And for me to say that, that's huge because I'm so big on the backfield for DC. But I was a little shocked that you spent $7,000 on Jarrell Presley.
Yeah, and I know running backs aren't necessarily the meat and potatoes of this league. So kind of spending a lot of money on what at least in week 1 seemed like a not very premium fantasy position seems like a lot. But I think there's just so many factors that go into this game. Like I said, Tampa ran the ball outstanding against them last week. They had 150 yards against them, and if Tampa could have executed, they probably would have scored some more points, which would have made, which probably would have deflated our hype on the Guardians defense a little bit. And plus the Guardians, the strength of their defense is their secondary and those fast linebackers. So I think that, Pep is known for running the ball. It's going to be frigid. It's going to be windy. It's not going to be optimal conditions for throwing the ball. Plus, you're playing an opponent that is a no-fly zone type of secondary. So I think they're going to pound the rock. I think he's going to get a ton of opportunities. I think he'll have room to run, and I think both combined is just going to be a home run.
I think it's funny. We have a YouTube comment here. Ricker88 said, "List is looking about white." Is this not the most white boy list on here? I mean, I'm looking through it. I'm like, oh, he's right.
He's not wrong. Not wrong.
Yeah,
It
interesting.
wasn't intentional, I promise.
Interesting. You're going with Landry Jones too, who hasn't started a game. You're not worried about any rust there, I suppose.
No. I don't think so. I think LA's defense is going to be just in such tatters that I don't think it really matters. I think he's good enough to kind of overcome and shake off some of the rust. Yeah, he might start off a little slow, but I think once the flow of the game gets going, and LA's going to. It's been a tumultuous week. I don't think their heads are going to be in the game, to be honest, quite frankly. And I think Hal Mummy and Landry Jones are just going to pummel the Wildcats this week. I really do.
Last thing I'll mention is Dan Williams. He had a huge week last week, but right now Aaron Murray hasn't practiced all week. He's been out with a foot injury. Are you worried about? Would you if it comes out in the next couple days that before we kick off that Aaron Murray's out? Are you going to keep Dan Williams in if Quentin Flowers is starting or Taylor Cornelius, or are you going to swap that out? You think?
Yeah, I'm going to keep him in because, honestly, Aaron Murray played awful last week. 47% completion percentage. He threw a bunch of picks. He was awful. I can't imagine Quentin Flowers or Taylor Cornelius playing worse than that. Even if they play just as bad, I still feel just as confident because Dan Williams put up a great line. He's the number one overall receiver in the league last week in terms of yardage. So I think, for me, I feel confident that if they just have even slightly better, shouldn't be that hard, quarterback play this week, that he's going to put up.
Can't get much worse. Yeah. Glass, I want you to defend us real quick because the fans have been going after us for our our week 2 power rankings for the Tampa Bay. Everyone is hating on the Tampa Bay Vipers. It's like if you're not a fan of the Vipers, you just love to rag on them. And everyone is saying that they should be 8th on our list. I think we had them at 6. So it's not like we had them in our top 3 or our top tier. Yeah. But I mean, I think the offense, especially for fantasy purposes, it's definitely a bunch of viable players. And I think, they led the league in offensive yardage last weekend. Davion Smith, who was actually in my fantasy lineup, a little teaser there, he ran for 75 yards. So they were able to get some yardage on the ground and have success between the 20s. But when they got to the red zone is when it became a complete cluster, what.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I mean, if you look at it, they led the XFL in total yardage, had a lot of first downs. They really moved the ball, came and really stalled around the red zone. So there's really no doubt about it. If they can improve in the red zone, they more than likely win last week. I actually really like what they did on defense. I mean, there wasn't a lot that New York did aside from a lot of some big plays down the field. They gave a couple of big plays, but really held Matt McGloin in check, and the running game for the Guardians was non-existent. So I think Tampa Bay is a lot better than people think. So for them to think that they were 8, I mean, I think LA looked a lot worse than Tampa did last week.
There's an argument for
I mean, I think both those teams looked worse than Tampa did. Tampa just didn't execute. That's all.
Well, and here's the thing: people are going off a scoreboard shock. It was 23-3.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a big scoreboard shock. But if you dig into the numbers and you actually watch the game, you saw that they had I think they had 3 turnovers, which again it comes down to execution. They put up the most yardage out of the entire league on offense, and then they have the number 1 team offense and the number 1 team defense in the league. They had in terms of statistics, in terms of yards given up, they're number 1 in both categories. So again, they just have to clean up the mental errors, the fumbles, the back-breaking picks by Murray in the red zone, and just clean that stuff up. Because if they do that, I don't know. I'm not going to say they win because they played bad, but first team in the league last week. No way.
No, I agree. And the other thing about it, I know we beat up Aaron Murray a little bit, but for the most, he had a couple turnovers in the red zone. And yes, no doubt about it, that's awful. You don't like that to see that if you're Mark Trestman, but you really moved the ball between the 20s. They ran the ball very successfully. They had the number 1 receiver in the league last week for the XFL. So I think they're a lot better than people think, and certainly a lot better than the scoreboard showed last week.
Yeah, I mean, we're not giving giving them a pass, because at the end of the day, you have to execute when it matters most. And they completely botched every opportunity they got. It was so insane to watch. Like, every time they had an opportunity to capitalize on something, they found a different way to screw it up. Whether it was through penalties, turnovers, which they had plenty of, just poor decision making. It was unbelievable to watch, really. So, I mean, that's really a concerning thing. Don't get me wrong, but I think if you look past just what the score says, and even the box score in some cases, they had success moving the ball, and a lot of this was against probably the best secondary in the league. And we talked about this in our pregame show, how worried I was. I picked the Vipers to win the game. I'll admit it, but I did say I was extremely worried about Aaron Murray going up against that Guardian secondary, for good reason, because they were making it hell for him all day long. All right, let's go ahead and go to yours, Gless. I'm going to pull yours up, and you can go through yours, then we'll break it down a little bit. So, Gless, here's your DraftKings lineup.
There it is right there. It's no shocker I go with Philip Walker. He was the star of the XFL in week 1, $10,600. Run and shoot offense. They're going to be throwing the ball 75-80% of the time. I like the matchup this week, even with the Battlehawks. So I'm going to go with the hot hand in Philip Walker. I know he's the most expensive quarterback, but I think he's the one that could give you a ton of value. If you look at last week, I don't know how many rushing touchdowns there were, but there sure as heck weren't. So that there weren't a lot. So I'm going to go with the quarterback that's going to throw a ton of touchdowns, and Philip Walker certainly fills that. Next, Matt Jones led the XFL last week in carries, 21 carries, was the leading rusher in all of the XFL. There were minimal rushing touchdowns last week, so I'm feeling a little bullish on the running backs this week. Those start to catch up. So I'm going to go with Matt Jones. I think he's going to get a lot of carries. I think the Battlehawks are going to follow the recipe they did last week in order to beat the Renegades. So I think you get a touchdown, maybe 2 this week. I think it's a great value at $5,900. So I'm going Matt Jones. Khalil Lewis, I'm trying to double dip this week. Houston quarterback, Houston receiver. He caught a touchdown last week. Sammy Coates struggled last week, had some drops. So I think you see more targets to Khalil Lewis. So I like that $8,900. I think that's money well spent. Nelson Spruce had a huge weekend with a backup quarterback. Who knows if Knopf plays? I don't know what to expect out of the LA offense, but what I do expect is that Nelson Spruce catches a ton of balls, just like he did last week, caught 12 balls, was targeted 13 times with the backup quarterback. I expect the same type of output from Nelson Spruce. That was his calling card in college. That's what his calling card was in week 1. So that's what I expect here in week 2. Flynn Nagel tied for the receptions lead for the Renegades with Landry Jones back in the lineup. I really like this value at $5,200. I think sneaky touchdown pick here. I think he may be able to get you a touchdown or 2. So I like him in the flex there. And Jaquan Gardner to kind of round out the offense, 4,000. That's kind of what I was left with. But he led the Dragons in rushing. The staff really likes him. I think if Seattle can get in the red zone down to the 10, down to the 5, I would expect some red zone touches for him as well, potentially some catches out of the backfield. So I like that at 4,000. I think that's a great value. And then last, the Renegades on defense, $4,800. They're up against LA. I know I have Nelson Spruce in there, but I'm going to take kind of the recipe of last week, even though that the Roughnecks were great on defense last week. Nelson Spruce still caught 12 receptions, which is why I'm still going to stick with Nelson Spruce yet. I'm going to go with the Renegades on defense because I think the Los Angeles Wildcats are going to be a gong show on offense. So, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with the Renegades, $4,800. Lord knows what's going to happen at quarterback. So I think that's a great play this week for $4,800. I think I was left with $200 left to spend.
Let's start here. Ryan Brackenridge, he says, Gardner over Farrow, interesting choice. And I kind of agree with him. I mean, I'm sure price has a lot to do with it. You probably got into the flex there. And I don't know what Farrow is off the top of my head. I have to look, but it's more expensive than Gardner. Is that? I think
$5,800. $5,800 and 58. Okay. And that was all I had was $4,000. So
okay,
I think it was a good value pick.
Yeah, Gus, I gotta say, I gotta go back to the Nelson Spruce pick. I love that pick. I don't care
Even for
what
that much
LA
money?
Yeah, because I don't care what LA does. They're gonna force feed him the football. Like he's gonna put up numbers, because he's the only option. They're gonna burn him up, and not only that, LA's gonna be probably playing from behind, so they're gonna be throwing the ball a ton more than what they probably did last week, or most teams are gonna do on average. So they get behind quick. They're going to play catch up, and I think Nelson Spruce is going to I think we're going to see a lot of 8, 9, 10 catch games from him every week. I really do.
And then you look at Matt Jones. I think we were all very surprised about the division of carries in this game. I think we were all very high on Christine Michael coming into the game. He may have even been in one of our lineups. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Matt Jones comes in and gets 21 carries to Christine Michael's, I think, 6 or 7. Which is a huge disparity. Are you shocked by the amount of touches that Jones got over Christine Michael? And do you think that's going to remain consistent, Gless?
I do, because of how effective it was. I know if you look at his average, it's not great. 21 carries, 85 yards. It's not great. But Christine Michael wasn't great either. And whatever they were doing, they were able to move the ball down the field against the Renegades. I think they're going to stick with a similar recipe, and at $5,900, I thought it was really great value. Had I gone with Christine Michael, I'd be guessing. At least with Matt Jones, I know what I'm getting. I feel like he will get at least half of the carries there in St. Louis. So,
yep, I agree.
Okay. It just worries me. That's all, because I'm trying to find running backs that we know are going to get the ball, and we're so early in the season of the XFL, and we don't really know what to expect. Like you look at Jaquan Gardner, even Farrow. I mean, that's a 3-way split. That's pretty even up in Seattle. I know for you're playing the value, but like Ryan mentioned on YouTube, Farrow, even if you pick him as one of your top, or if it's your top running back, let's say, he's going to be splitting it 3 ways, not just 2. And then Matt Jones, I mean, he gets the bulk of the carries, but I don't know. Christine Michael, he was their number 1 pick. He was their first-round pick. So I'm not sold that he's going to be getting the bulk of the carries the entire time. I think it may have just been the flow of the game. They thought Jones was being more effective in that moment, but I'm not sure that's going to be a consistent thing.
Yeah, that could be. But I will defend my Jaquan Gardner pick in this sense that if you look at week 1 in the XFL, I think when it comes to fantasy and when it comes to value and guys that actually produce, I think you have to look at the receiver position. So that's why I spent a lot of money on Khalil Lewis, Nelson Spruce, Flynn Nagel, and then I kind of looked at what else I had, right? I only had about $4,200 left because I went and picked the Renegades defense, because I knew I wanted to pick the defense that was playing the Los Angeles Wildcats. So, for me, it was value. Kenneth Farrow, yes, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know how running backs are going to pan out in the XFL. That's my big question. Week 1, I saw receivers score a lot of touchdowns. I didn't see a lot of running backs. That's why I went receiver as far as kind of a priority as far as flex.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to my lineup. Let me just bring it up here. Gless, I kind of took the whole Phillip Walker to Khalil Lewis. I think that's a money combination.
Money.
I didn't even mess around with quarterback. I'm going to spend money there. I spent money last week on Cardell Jones. He had a good game. I'm doing the same with Phillip Walker. You're not going to get him like the value that you got Kenny last week. Those days are already over, I think. Kenny, what'd you get? It was like 7,000 last week.
I got him for like $7,800 last week. He was less than what Connor Cook was going for.
Whoever picked Phillip Walker last week hit the jackpot. So I think from now on he's going to be around this price range, but it's worth the money. At running back, I'm going Davion Smith. I talked about it a little bit earlier. He's one of the few running backs in the league that I feel doesn't have as much competition. I know Jaquez Patrick is there, but he dominated the carries. He was effective when he got the carries. So I think that's a safe bet, and he's a reasonable price at running back. I think this lineup overall, you could call it the redemption lineup, because a lot of these guys underperformed last week, but I have high hopes for him this week. And one of those guys is Jeff Badette, and that's because Landry Jones is coming back. And I think that combination right there is what you need. I'm not taking what Philip Nelson did with this offense too seriously. I think we're going to see a completely different looking offense with Landry Jones. My only concern is he's been out for so long, how much rust is going to be on there with him coming in. But I think Jeff Badette has a bounce back week, especially in PPR. I think he's going to get a lot of targets from Jones, and I think he's going to be in line for a good day. Khalil Lewis, Gless, you already talked about him. I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, you could really go with any Houston Roughnecks receiver. We all had Sammy Coates in our lineup last weekend, and
we did.
He screwed us all. If we had picked any other Roughnecks receiver, we would have been okay. But Sammy Coates was the one guy that really didn't have a great game. And it's unfortunate because the guy is so talented, but what plagued him in the NFL, and the reason he's probably not in the NFL now, is because of the drop passes, the inconsistent hands, and he showed that in his first game with Houston. But I'm going with Khalil Lewis. He caught a touchdown last week. Here's a couple more redemption guys. Keenan Reynolds, who was benched last week because of lack of production. I know Austin Prohl, he was one of the standouts for fantasy-wise, but I'm going to stick with Keenan Reynolds for another week. I'm not going to bail on him after 1 week. He was the number one receiver going into week 1. Coach Zorn just talked so highly about this guy the whole offseason. I find it hard to imagine that they're just going to jump ship on him after one game. First home game of the season. I am a little concerned that Silvers is banged up. We don't know exactly if he's going to play yet. That game's going to be really interesting, by the way. We're going to see we could see backup quarterbacks for both teams in that game. We'll see, though. And then you move to Lance Dunbar. Lance Dunbar was kind of an anomaly. He wasn't even on the depth chart a couple of weeks ago. Bob Stoops had spoke highly of him leading up to the regular season. So he comes into the game, and Cameron Artis-Payne, who we all thought was going to be the bell cow, gets, 2 carries? He has more passing yards than he does rushing yards. And Lance Dunbar didn't have a good game by any means, but he was their leading rusher. He can catch out of the backfield. And like I said, I'm expecting a bounce-back week for the Renegades with Landry Jones back. So Lance Dunbar, I think, is a great value with 4,600. And then I was going to go with the Dallas defense, but I was trying to shift some money around. And I thought the Houston Roughnecks, they played so well last week. They're facing a rookie quarterback. Ta'amu had a fantastic week 1, but I'm wondering if he'll be able to do that week 2. If he's going to feel the pressure of having to keep up with that offense, because LA definitely felt the pressure. So I'm going with the Houston Roughnecks there, 3,400. I don't think you can go wrong. They were one of the better defenses last year.
Yep.
Or last week.
Last week.
My redemption lineup is ready to go and make some noise and win me some money this week.
Here you go. Riley, I got 2 questions for you. One, Jeff Badette, interesting pick. What was he, 8,700?
Yeah, he was 8,700. Yeah, 8,700.
8,700. But pretty high for a guy who didn't score last week. So what kind of went into the Jeff Badette pick?
Well, he's the number 1 pick for that team in the skill position phase. I think he stood out all camp. I just think last week I'm really just a clean slate for the Dallas Renegades because I'm starting Dunbar as well. I think with Landry Jones in, we're really going to get an idea of what this offense looks like, and I think Jeff Badette is a huge part of that offense. I think last week was just a fluke. They were just trying to get through with Philip Nelson. Everybody who follows the show knows our feelings about Philip Nelson. So I'm not gonna penalize Jeff Badette because Philip Nelson won't throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field.
Sure.
I know he didn't catch anything last week. Well, he had 3 receptions last week, but he was extremely quiet. I think he had 3 catches for 6 yards, I believe. So not a great game, but I have hopes. And same with Keenan Reynolds. I mean, Keenan Reynolds did nothing last week. I think he had 1 or 2 catches.
He did 2 catches.
Yeah.
I think it was 5 yards. That was going to be my second question. Is that's high for a guy who caught 2 catches last week. So, why do you like Keenan Reynolds this week? I guess that's my question.
Sorry, go ahead, Kenny. What were you going to say?
No, go ahead. Answer his question first, and I'll ask him.
So Keenan Reynolds, it's kind of the same as Jeff Badette. I'm going with guys that have been kind of consistently mentioned throughout training camp. I'm not going to overreact to 1 week of football. Guys have off weeks all the time. And I know Prohl really stood out, but Keenan Reynolds was the guy. I mean, all they talked about all offseason was Keenan Reynolds and how he's going to be a playmaker. He's going to be a difference maker for this team. And I'm not willing to jump off that ship yet after 1 week. I'm not overreacting to what we saw week 1. I will be concerned though if Brandon Silvers isn't playing because as mediocre as he played last week, I am not a big BJ Daniels guy. So if he's in, I might try to swap that out before the game. But for now, I'm sticking with Reynolds. And then it kind of fell like with my flex guys, it kind of fell. I was trying to piece together based on how much money I had left. I only had $100 left over, so I used most of what I had. And I thought Keenan Reynolds is a guy that he's going to have a bounce back week. Him and Badette. Redemption team.
What do you when you guys are going through your draft, when you're going through your DraftKings and you're picking your players, what is the one thing you guys are looking for more? Are you guys looking for more value? Like, okay, like at quarterback example. So you guys both picked Phillip Walker, PJ Walker. Are you guys looking for just guys who straight up just they're going to throw up numbers like that at QB, or are you looking for more of a value play at QB? Like what changed from last week to this week?
Good, Riley. You want to cover that one first?
Well, I spent a lot of money at quarterback last week. I just think, I'm picking offenses that I believe in, and I know how high we all are in the run and shoot, and you guys especially with the Houston Roughnecks. And, after that performance last week, I see no reason why they're not going to repeat the same. I mean, they're going to put up points. So if there's anywhere that I'm going to splurge, it's going to be on the quarterback for the Houston Roughnecks. I'm not necessarily opposed to going value there because I actually originally had Brandon Silvers in there. And I know that might turn a lot of heads, raise some eyebrows, but the Tampa Bay Vipers gave up a lot of big plays to Matt McGloin and the New York Guardians. And we talked about this when we were breaking down the power rankings, but Brandon Silvers had some really nice throws. He had a lot of bad throws, made a lot of bad decisions. And I think that team kind of got away from their identity in the second half because I just think DC's talent was overwhelming them in the second half. DC was actually playing the way that DC should be playing. But I still think that, I still think Brandon Silvers is a viable option, and he was obviously a lot cheaper by like $3,000. So if he's playing and you're looking to save some money at quarterback, I don't think he's a bad option because the Tampa Bay Vipers showed me that at least as of now, they're susceptible to the deep pass. And I think if you get some of these guys like Prohl or Reynolds in space, they could be dangerous. Even Jaquan Gardner out of the backfield. He didn't really make too much of a difference catching the ball in the backfield last week, but that's an element that he brings to that offense that I think could be utilized as well. Yeah.
I think so far what we saw in week one was...
I like that.
I think in week one, I got such a good vibe from Phillip Walker, the fact that he's a can't miss, right? Like, I want to know what I can expect every single week, which is why I'm able to splurge $10,600 on Phillip Walker, right? Like, I want a guy who's going to sling the ball and throw touchdowns because there weren't a lot of them last week. There weren't a lot of touchdown throws last week. So there was that. And the other thing was receivers, which I want guys that are number one receivers and that I know that are going to get the ball thrown to them, which is why I went Khalil Lewis and Nelson Spruce. When it comes to value, I look for running backs. I didn't see a lot of running back touchdowns last week, at least not a lot of consistency when it came to running back scoring touchdowns. So look at options, look at values, look at catches out of the backfield, look at flexibility. So that's kind of how I approached this week was I know what I'm getting with Phillip Walker. I know what I'm getting with Khalil Lewis. I know what I'm getting with Nelson Spruce. Matt Jones, Jaquan Gardner, Flynn Nagel. I think those are all great value picks there, right? We get a lot of carries, leading rusher. So if he's getting that much run there in the first game, and it wasn't even close. I mean, it was 3-1 more carries than anybody else on the team, including Christine Michael. You know what? If they're going to feed him the rock like they did last week, I got to think he finds the end zone, right? I mean, 21 carries, that's a lot of carries.
Right. Yeah.
That's a ton of carries. So that's how I approached it.
Gless, I want to ask you something. Ryan on YouTube, he says, PJ Walker reminds me of Russell Wilson. Same size, mobile enough, creates problems, accurate composure. No, I'm not going to go there, Gless, where you think I'm going. I'm actually going to ask about that comparison, Russell Wilson and Phillip Walker. I mean, because now that I think about it, they kind of have that same, they kind of move the same way. It's just very fluid, very natural, kind of the same kind of arm motion. I can see it. I kind of see it there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Way more than Keith Price, that's for sure.
Well, actually, no, that's actually not true. Philip Walker and Keith Price may as well be doppelgangers, just in different uniforms. Those guys are identical. I've had to do a double take.
Except one's a starting quarterback and one's not in the league.
Oh my gosh, I have made this point over and over. Who is the better player? Philip Walker is definitely the better player. So, I can see it. I can see it. Russ is a lot more dynamic with his legs and really can take off a lot more than PJ can. I think PJ has a great arm. I think PJ looks down the field. Russ has the ability to really take the ball down and make guys miss in space, and that's really hard to do as a quarterback. I don't know if PJ Walker has that type of ability, but I'm still very bullish on PJ's ability to be a gunslinger. Right? I don't think Russ is a gunslinger. I think PJ is a gunslinger.
Interesting.
I agree with that. Yeah. I will say this, a caveat on my lineup, it will change if Quentin Flowers is named the starting quarterback for the Tampa Bay Vipers. I'll pick him up as a value play at QB and roll with and make a different lineup for
really?
Sure.
Wow,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. With the rushing yards we could potentially get, yeah.
Yeah, I have concerns. I have concerns about that. I have concerns in what he can do in the passing game just because he wasn't the guy getting all the reps at QB. The fact that he'd be coming in as a backup. I get his rushing attempts. The ability, you get that kind of second level, that different dynamic in with him there. But I maybe it may work out for you, but I certainly wouldn't roll with it. I'm not that bullish on Quentin Flowers.
I don't understand why Trestman is so why is he so committed to Aaron Murray? I just don't get it. Like throughout the whole offseason since Aaron Murray was allocated, I kept saying there's going to be another allocation in Tampa. There's got to be another allocation in Tampa. We kept seeing him in St. Louis, Seattle, LA, like all over the place, and it just never happened. Like Trestman was very content going into the season with Aaron Murray, and I just don't get it. And I don't mean to pile on the guy, but I mean, we've seen since he's left Georgia, he's failed to stay on practice squads for more than a month or so. In the AAF, he lost his starting job to Matt Sims, for crying out loud. Then he came back in and he was, very subpar. And all of a sudden he's handed the keys to this Tampa Bay offense, which has so much talent around it. It drives me crazy. So I understand Quentin Flowers maybe throwing the ball as a natural thrower isn't the best option, but in terms of just football talent, he's probably one of the best players on the team. And if you're not going to put him at full-time quarterback, you got to find ways to get him more involved. All they did last week was they would bring him in for a clear RPO, and he would do his read option and he'd run off the field. Like, you got to get him involved as a running back. You got to get him involved as a wide receiver. You have to find ways to get creative with it. That's what I was so excited about with Trestman because, Trestman is a matchup type of coach. He really brings out the best in terms of dissecting the matchups and utilizing his player's skill set. That's why he has such an odd group of players with Truesdell at tight end and Quentin Flowers and all these tall receivers. Like, it's a very interesting group of players. And I just was very underwhelmed last week with how they used Quentin Flowers. I thought it was very unoriginal. Yeah. And quite frankly, it really annoyed the crap out of me when I was watching. And Quentin Flowers would be in there, and they're in the red zone. They get to like the 5-yard line. Quentin Flowers has gotten him there, and then here comes Aaron Murray trotting back in to throw an incomplete pass. Like, it just it drove me freaking nuts. I don't understand what the love affair with Aaron Murray is. Yeah.
I certainly don't disagree. My question would be, if you start Quentin Flowers, and I'm not ragging against the guy. I see the chat on YouTube. Everybody says, bless, you're wrong about Quentin Flowers. I'm seeing this. I get it. Okay. But Quentin Flowers' skill set and what Mark Trestman wants to do, in my opinion, are conflicting. Right? If you're going to put Quentin Flowers in there, I think you have to run a style of offense. This is similar to what the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson, right? A guy who can, you have to have a threat with the run. You have to have a dynamic running game. And there's no doubt that Quentin Flowers can throw the ball and that he can do that. But Aaron Murray got the majority of the reps in camp. He got the majority of the reps in minicamp. he knew what Mark Trestman wanted to do. So if Mark Trestman is willing to kind of morph the offense a little bit, then I think Quentin Flowers is a decent play. But if you're going to ask Quentin Flowers to go do what Mark Trestman wanted Aaron Murray to do, maybe it'll work out. I'm just not sure.
Gless, are you hearing Kenny? I'm not hearing Kenny.
I can't hear Kenny. Nope.
Kenny, we can't hear you. So we're going to wrap up here. I don't know what's going on with Kenny. I mean, we've been going for like 40 minutes. But the last thing I'm going to say about that is, what does this say about Taylor Cornelius? Like, there must not be a lot of confidence in that quarterback room for Trestman to be committing to Aaron Murray after an outing like that. And I understand you don't pull him for game 2, but he may not even play. He's been injured all week. But in the game, Aaron Murray was clearly not getting the job done, and he refused to try Cornelius out. I mean, he went with Quentin Flowers, but he wasn't taking Murray out. He was just putting a package, a pre-designed package in where Quentin Flowers comes in, does a read
Quentin
option.
Flowers, correct.
Yeah, it wasn't like Quentin Flowers was coming in, to change it up and see if he could get the offense rolling. Like, it was Aaron Murray's game the entire time. They would just take him out for a few plays here and there. It was mind-boggling to me. I just don't understand how you can stick with a guy like that, who's playing so poorly.
Well, that's kind of why I'm worried about if they just throw Quentin Flowers to be the starter, because it looks like that Mark Trestman just had this package of offensive plays for Quentin Flowers. And again, this is not an indictment against Quentin Flowers at all. I like the player. I think he's dynamic. I think he's versatile. But, it was clear that they had a package of 4 or 5 plays, and that was it. That's all they had, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can go in, try to do a change of pace, and then go back to Murray and keep the defense honest. But, it's not like Quentin Flowers went out there and had the entire playbook, right? That's just not what he's been – that's not what he's practiced to do. So in a week, if Quentin Flowers runs out there as the starter, I will be very curious on the package of plays and the game plan that Mark Trestman has, because I don't know what it is. And he may change it, but I'm not sure.
I haven't listened to a word you said, Gless. I'm just looking at Kenny.
I know.
Get
I'm
off the keyboard, man.
I know.
Get off the chat. You're trying to turn everyone against us. Could you guys hear Kenny there? I couldn't hear him. Did you hear him, Gless?
No, nobody can hear Kenny.
Can you guys hear me now?
I saw
I can hear you
now. Hey,
now.
there we go. Now we can hear you now.
Say something.
I can plug it back in. I think it maybe came undone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're going in and out. Yeah, he probably can't hear us.
Dayjack on YouTube said, you trust a coach that believes in Jay Cutler. I trust in a coach that has taken numerous quarterbacks besides Jay Cutler to be all-pro quarterbacks. That's what I trust.
Uh-oh.
Boom.
Coach Gless is getting
drop.
Coach Gless is getting heated.
Get back at me, D-Jack.
Oh, I love it. Gless the GOAT, right?
Boom.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Later night, I mean, God, we're going so over. We're supposed to be interviewing Mike Mitchell, previewing the upcoming games this weekend, and then we're going to give our picks, which are going to come out on Saturday. So hopefully we can get all that recorded tonight. We'll see. Yeah, free Kenny. Kenny, just give it up, man. It's over. Stop typing. He's trying to turn the chat against us, Gless.
I know,
this is what he does on the Discord.
All right, we gotta end this.
Well, thanks for everybody for joining. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got some tips for fantasy this weekend. If you want to join our DraftKings league, leave your DraftKings username in the comment section. Kenny, I know you can hear me. I can't hear you, but can you copy and paste everyone that's putting their DraftKings name into like some sheet or something? And Kenny will send you an invite. So if you're interested in being in our DraftKings league this weekend, go ahead and put your name in the chat, and we'll get you involved with that. But yeah, so we're going to be talking to Mike Mitchell here, recording that. We're going to be putting that out tomorrow, previewing the games. Saturday before the games, make sure you check it out. We're going to be premiering our picks for the weekend, so you don't want to miss that. And then we're going to be watching the games with everybody else and then regrouping, and we'll be in touch recapping all of the action from weekend number 2. It's crazy, guys, that we're already in weekend number 2 of the XFL. Kenny's going to be up in D.C. for the Guardians game. I'm not sure if I'm going up yet. My back is just, I'm not sure if I'm there. But, got to commit to the show. So who knows, I might be there. If you're going to be in D.C., hit us up on Discord. We'll meet up for a beer or something. But all All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Check us out on social media at XFL Chalk Talk, xflchalktalk.com, and be on the lookout. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you see when all these videos that I just mentioned come out. So stay on top of all of the news coming out of the XFL here with XFL Chalk Talk. Everyone have a good night, and we will see you next time.